Hey guys, we're back and we're on to storage. You are doing a great job. Safe food storage starts with wrapping or covering food. After that, how you store the food depends on the type of food and your options for storage. Preventing cross contamination with storage placement is the objective of storage when it comes to food service. It is the main objective. And you want to start with the supplies. Store all items in designated storage areas. Like this side is for produce, this side is for fish, this side is for etc. Store items away from walls and at least 6 inches off of the floor. That is very important. 6 inches. Store single use items such as sleeve of single use cups, single use gloves in its original packaging. Going into containers. Store food in containers intended for food, such as NSF quality containers. You'll see a brand of this NSF label on the actual unit itself. Use containers that are durable, leak-proof, and able to be sealed or covered. Never use empty food containers to store chemicals. Never put food in empty chemical containers to prevent residue transfers, regardless of how clean you may think it is. Residue can be microscopic and still be hazardous. Non-food supply storage. Cleaning. Keep all storage areas clean and dry often. Clean dollies, carts, transporters, and trays daily. Store food in containers that have been cleaned and sanitized. Remember the three basin sink of washing, rinsing, sanitizing. Store dirty linens away from food. Remember how the cross contamination can happen even off of our clothes and our linens. Store them in clean, non-absorbent containers and or in washable laundry bags. Safe food starts with wrapping and recovering. After that, now let's put the food away. You want to make sure you put it in a certain order because the way of food drippings and the way they have different types of viruses, toxins, bacteria, pathogens, etc., per the class of food, you want to make sure that you keep as much distance away from them as possible while they're all being in the same unit, such as a large freezer or refrigerator. So you want to store your raw meat and poultry and seafood separately from ready to eat food. And you want to store ready to eat foods on top of the raw meat, poultry, and seafood, preventing juices from the raw food from dripping onto the ready to eat food. I understand our Jew sauce does have raw drippings into it. However, that's a part of a dish. It shouldn't be just freely in your storage containers. Raw meat, poultry, and seafood can be stored with ready to eat food in a freezer if all of the items have been commercially processed and packed and stored correctly. Frozen food that is being thawed in coolers must also be stored below ready to eat food. Store raw meat, poultry, and seafood in coolers in a top to bottom order. The order is based on the minimum internal cooking temps. We'll get into that in the next slides. And a rule to understand here, when we're saying top to bottom or when we're saying that the ready to eat food should be placed on top, we literally mean on a shelf unit, not to put it on top of the packaging like you have a bowl or a storage container for a ready to eat salad placed directly on top of the ham. There should be a barrier in between, which is usually a shelf. Storage locations. Locker rooms or dressing rooms are for non-food items. Restrooms or garbage rooms for custodial items are for non-food items. Mechanical rooms for custodial items are for non-food items. Never store your food items under unshielded sewer lines or leaking water lines. This is usually in a basement like setting. And you should never store your food items under safe stairwells for custodial items. You need to make sure that your non-food items are away from your custodial space and or your personal item space. This will ensure that there is no room for cross-contamination. Make your way through the following best practice list. So I'm going to allow you to review this at your own leisure, but it's pretty much just restating everything we just went through just in this pretty slide. Okay, guys, let's bring this all together and close out this chapter. So, for food storage orders, we just mentioned that the ready to eat and cooked foods have to be on the very top shelf because we need to make sure that there is a barrier in between all of these classifications of storage. And these are based off of their internal cooking temperatures prior to storage, is how you will understand which one comes first and which goes next. So for ready to eat or TCS foods, they need to have been cooked at 135 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature readings prior to going into the storage. The next category here is raw seafood or raw meat. So fish has to be cooked for at 145 degrees Fahrenheit and have that temperature reading for at least 15 seconds. The same thing for roast, which is that large piece of meat that is not ground or has any other processing going on. That needs to read 145 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 4 minutes when doing your temp reading because of how thick the piece of meat is. The next category is raw ground meat. This had to have been reading 155 degrees Fahrenheit during its internal temp checks. Same for shellfish. They are now being served after having been cooked, having have opened the shellfish. It needed to have read 155 degrees Fahrenheit internally for at least 15 seconds before putting it into the storage units. And lastly, poultry. Poultry has to have read 165 degrees Fahrenheit for an internal temp for at least 15 seconds when you did your temp check. Same for stuffings and other casserole-like dishes that also were made with meat, such as the poultry or fish. They need to have had read a 165-degree Fahrenheit temp check reading prior to being put into storage. Thus, this direction of top to bottom. Everything at the top starts with the lesser temp reading amount going all the way down to the bottom with a higher temp reading amount.